everyone, and thank you for joining me for another Woman's Spotlight. Every month, we bring you an amazing woman that's up to great things. And the reason we do this is to inspire you to get out there, step into expansion, and live a diversified life full of all the things that you want to do. And today is no different. I have Martyna with me today, who is a phenomenal leader in the tech sector, but not just any technology. She actually runs as a software engineer, a team of 21 people that build software every day. And so I thought my job was hard, but I'm sure we're going to hear from her what that's like being a female in that environment. She also manages to have a family with 2 lovely boys. So we'll talk a little bit today about how she manages it all, where she finds her joy, and what might bring her some obstacles that she's had to overcome in her day. So without further ado, Martyna, thank you so much for joining me today and all of our listeners.
Thanks so much for having me, Tara. It's really exciting to be here. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so just for all of you at home, how this happened is we were both on this Women in Tech Global Summit with potentially up to 100,000 people around the world listening. And I just was in love with what I heard from you. So I'd asked my assistant to reach out. So first, thank you for accepting that and giving us your time today, because I know that that's the one equal thing we all have. And it's so precious, is your time.
I love it. It was such a weird experience speaking at that conference because I had nobody in the room. So I was just talking into a void, and then having people actually come out and say that not only did they attend, but they actually enjoyed it is really makes me feel good, because I had no idea what happened or how it went over or how it was received. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I find it really hard to do that, like talking into an empty room, because we get so much energy from the other person. How did you do that? Like, did you visualize someone in front of you? Did you just go out there and do it?
I just went out and did it. So I've been working remote for 10 years since my son's been born, but way before COVID, way before video conferencing was so huge. And I remember my first job in a startup that built LIMS systems, laboratory management systems for genetic labs. I had to do demos. So I would build a demo and then I would demo it, and nobody was on camera back then. So my first job, right after having a baby, I was in my basement room. It was completely dark, and I was giving a demo to nothing. There was no feedback. Nobody was talking. And I went back to that when I was giving that talk, and was just like, you know what, that one fine, this will fine. I have my script. I know what to say. Just keep with it. But it's definitely hard when you don't get feedback. You can't tell if anybody's snoozing or rolling their eyes or, really excited or anything like that. So I don't recommend it. I hope they figure out a better way to do, internet virtual conferences.
I agree, Martyna. And we're seeing more and more of that. And people like us, we've been in tech for a long time, so we're used to doing remote work, but we always get sometimes to get in front of a customer, at least I do. And now I feel a more and more of a longing to just see someone's face, see their reaction, connect with them on a deeper level. So I think you did an amazing job for not being able to see anyone on the other end. And for me, I know it was tough. I was like talking to myself into the Zoom screen. So I share your pain there. But amazing story. So you were born originally in Poland. You and your parents left there, escaped to West Germany, started a new life. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. So I was pretty little back then, 6, 7 years old. And I just remember, we were going on vacation. Back then, Poland was communist. We weren't part of the USSR, but we were behind the Iron Curtain. And my mom always wanted to get out. She hated it there. Like, she read some books about life in America, and she's like, I want that. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to go anywhere I want. And somehow, magically, she booked us on a cruise from Poland to Denmark across the Baltic Sea. So I was like, we packed a backpack each. We're going to on a 2-week cruise across the sea, and they let us out in Denmark, in Copenhagen. My parents didn't tell me that we weren't going back on the boat. So we
Wow.
just stayed there. My mom had a contact. We stayed with them for a couple of days. That welcome ran out, so we stayed in refugee housing, which was one of my fondest memories, was going to like childcare or kindergarten in refugee housing, and literally nobody spoke the same language. Not the teachers, not the kids, and somehow we all got along, and somehow, it all worked.
Mm.
And that always stayed with me, that like you can just make it work. Like whatever the circumstances are, like you can persevere and make it work. And then after that, we actually ended up jumping the border from Denmark to West Germany, and then just kind of getting asylum in West Germany, living, I guess it was political refugee status, what it was. And we lived there for 2 years. My sister was born there. And then the wall came down, and they were like, well, your country's democratic now. See you later. You gotta
Wow.
go back.
And then you went back?
We went back. Yeah. So we had to pack up. I think we milked it for about another 1.5 years after the wall came down. So the wall came down in 89. My sister was born at the beginning of 91. And then that summer we were back in Poland. But I also remember driving back. So we had to drive from West Germany across all of East Germany back into Poland. And the stark contrast, the difference of the worlds. Like West Germany was green and clean and beautiful and Western, and the stores had everything on the shelves. And then all of a sudden you cross a border. And it's just is what you imagine, Russia being back then. I mean, it was just, everything was the same concrete building blocks. Everything was kind of run down and dirty and empty. And just you're just crossing a line, and the world completely changes.
Wow. And were you like 11 years old at that time, or?
At that time, I was, I think, 9 or 10.
Wow.
Do
And
the
you
math
still
back.
remember that contrast. So it's amazing how you have that beautiful memory of everybody being different and still being able to get along and connect and communicate. That diversity was so powerful when you were 7, and you have that memory, and then this memory of this stark contrast. It's amazing how as children we put those in the back of the mind, and either they become a limiting belief or they become something that really empowers us. So what happened next? So now you're 9, 10 years old, you're back home. What happened next?
So I went through a lot of changes, like I was actually pushed up a grade when I was young. So I had some change there. And then in Germany and Denmark, we kept changing as an immigrant or a refugee. They just kind of move you to wherever refugee housing is. So I changed schools in Germany alone, I think 2 or 3 times, and they pushed me up grades and moved me around. And then when we were coming back to Poland, I was like, okay, change is over. Like, these are the kids I went to kindergarten with and first grade with, and we'll come back and everything will be great. Like, these are my old friends. And there was such a resistance, because now I'm coming from West Germany. I'm like rich, and I abandoned them. And like my nickname became Hitler's daughter. So I was Hitler's daughter, and nobody wanted to play with me. And I came home crying because I had no friends. And I literally, at this point, I don't remember that. I remember just going back out because my mom's like, well, go try again. You don't have a choice. Like, you have to make friends. And I just kept following these kids around until they started showing up at my door and being friends. So persistence, I guess, is what defined those moments, right? Where I just kept at it, and they just, the insults died down, and they started becoming friends of mine. And it went well. It was just surprising that, like, you're going back to your homeland, to your family, and then you still can get resistance. Point being, like, change is hard. No matter how minor the change is, it really shakes people and makes it difficult for them to digest.
And it sounds like change was hard on all sides. It was hard for you because it sounds like you had to be very resilient and strong in that situation, but it was hard for your friends because you were now different and you were gone, and there might have been a little fear of the unknown and a little fear of where have you been all this time. So you stayed the course, you were resilient, you maintained friends. What happened next in your journey? When did you leave Poland?
So the minute we came back to Poland, my mom already started scheming, because the United States was always the end game, right? The
Yes.
land of opportunities, the American dream. So my mom started scheming the minute the wall came down and we knew we were going to go back. And through my dad is a physical therapist, he got a sponsorship into Chicago. So he went in 94 on a work visa, and then by 95 we moved there. So this was 8th grade. I started 8th grade in Detroit, Michigan.
Wow.
And then that was another stark contrast, because back then all I knew of the United States was what I saw in Dallas, the TV show, and 90210.
Sunny and like beautiful, and like California.
Yeah.
Where
And
were the
I
palm
landed
trees?
in 1995 in Detroit, Michigan, which is not Beverly Hills at all. Not even a little bit. The actual airport, because, you know, Poland came out from behind the Iron Curtain and started building. So our airport was beautiful and new, and like Detroit had it for like, you know, 100 years. So it was all run down and dirty. And we're expecting America the beautiful, and we got Detroit.
Yes.
So it was different. So 95, I don't know, I remember the date, October 11th is when we landed in the United States, October 11th, 1995. So I've actually been here longer than anywhere else.
Wow. So I know Detroit too well because I'm a Canadian, and I've gone down and I've done lots of work in Windsor, and I managed Detroit, that state, Michigan, as for the last 2 years. So I'm very familiar with that stark contrast. How did you curb all your ambitions about sunshine and palm trees and adjust to what you and even your mom, because I'm sure that was part of her dream as well?
Well, because we've been through so much travel and so much change, and like we lived in Germany at one point, we lived in some room, like we had one room for our entire family above a barn, where we didn't even have glasses, like we used cut off milk cartons as cups because that's all we had. So with all that experience, it's just like, well, it's not what we expected, but we're going to make it work. Like, this is where we are. That's like my entire family's like mindset is, this is what we have. We're going to make the best of what we have, and we're going to just reach for the next step. Like, there's very little mourning or complaining about it being bad. You just, well, okay, let's see what the next step is. Which tends to be inspirational to some and drives my husband crazy, because at this point I think anything's possible. Well, let's try that. And he's just like, no, I can't move this wall for you. It literally supports my whole house, our whole house. I'm like, well, but have you tried it? So it's a give and take.
Yeah, let's put in a reinforced beam, honey. Then we can take the wall down and nobody will know. Like, we can do it.
Exactly. I seen it on HGTV. They did it in like a 30-minute episode.
Yes.
The wall still stands, by the way. He won that argument.
He did. Okay, good. But that's what happens, right? When we're forced into these difficult situations, our outcomes depend on how we embark on it, right? And the process change, how resilient we are, how we're going to look at the opportunity. So it sounds like you had really grounding parents that helped reinforce the resiliency for you. When did you decide to get into the tech space and engineering and software?
Never. I never decided to get into it. So I had no interest in computers whatsoever. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to graphic design for a minute. I wanted to paint or whatnot. But as any immigrant, child of an immigrant knows, the two options for an immigrant child are medical school or law. That's all immigrant parents accept. And I settled for med school. And so my goal was to go to med school, because anything else, like, you don't make any money. What's the point of even coming to this country? Halfway through grad school, I weaseled through undergrad, I weaseled myself out of grad school and convinced my parents to permit a PhD instead of an MD. And I went to work on an MD PhD, on a PhD in medical and molecular genetics at Oregon Health and Science University. So I went into science, and by that time, my parents lived in New Hampshire, so on the East Coast, and I was in Portland, Oregon, on the West Coast. And I had more freedom of like, well, I don't actually want to do that. So about 2 years in, I quit grad school and I moved to LA chasing a boy. And then kind of drifted. So I started in genetics with a real big desire for art. Moved to LA, worked at UCLA for a hot minute, and then I got into canvassing. So I was an environmental activist for Environment California. I got to shake Governor Schwarzenegger back then's hand as he was signing one of the bills that we worked on. There is an old picture at the San Francisco gate, like my arm is in the photo still, and they cut me off, but I know it's my arm.
Did it have the tattoo?
No, this was before tattoo.
Okay.
So they didn't get to see that. But then I got like thinking of being political, getting political as an activist. I started thinking about law. So because I had a science background, I got myself into a patent law firm. So I was a paralegal for a minute. And then LA really got to me and my boyfriend, now my husband, and he got a job offer here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And full circle back, I couldn't really find a job, but because I had a background in science, I worked in a lab. This story does have a point. It goes back to technology.
I love it.
What happened was I was running genetic testing. They did paternity screening and other genetic screening at this lab that I worked at. And I started reprogramming the robots, not because I wanted to be a software engineer or had any knowledge of it, but I felt like we were doing all these manual things because we didn't utilize the robot in full. And the answer I got was always, well, that's how we've always done it. That's how they are set up. And to me, it was like, that is the dumbest answer anybody can give me. So I started fiddling with these robots, these liquid handlers, to just do more work for us, be more efficient. And then the engineering development team were like, are you interested in helping us out? So I kind of learned on the job. They brought me on, they taught me some things. I read SQL books. Like, I don't know if anybody's actually read a SQL book front to back. I did. That's how I learned how to write code. And that's where it started. That's how I got into tech. I wasn't looking for it. It just kind of happened, and I ended up being good at it.
Martyna, I love that story, not just because it's very similar to my story as far as how I was looking, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? I never thought I'd be in tech. And then all of a sudden it just sort of arrived at the front door, and I was up for the challenge, and I got into it. And then here we are, 20 years later, and I'm still in tech. So I love that openness to see what comes your way. And it almost sounds to me like life was happening for you, not to you. You embraced all the different opportunities, and you've created something beautiful with it. And I can't help but look at the artwork in your background, because you said you were very artistic and creative. Is that any of your work back there? Because it's
not any of my work. I'm actually trying to decorate my office. Those are, pointing to the wrong side. Those are actually pieces all given by my various husbands. I actually have only one that I'm married to. Okay. And the flower is something he made. The other two are by my work husbands. They're gifts. The dragon is a man that actually taught me how to work, how to code. He was my boss way back when. I'm his boss now, actually. So he brought it back to me from Japan. And the one in the middle is a drawing by Ralph Steadman of Hunter Thompson, who's hands down my favorite author. And my really good friend and mentor gifted it to me when I got promoted at my current job to director. So
Oh, they're both, all of the work is stunning. And I love how you talk, I call it a wubby, right? Like those men that are in our work environment that build us up. So maybe that's a next spot for us. Let's drill in there, because as women, I mean, for me, it's really important to support women and men, but especially immigrant women in our country. It's really near and dear to my heart. But when we talk about the men, those alliances, without them, I don't think we can all create equity and truly embrace diversity in this world. So you've already told us that they're important to you by having that beautiful artwork behind you. But tell us more about how male alliances in your workplace, as a mentor, as a supporting husband, how has that helped you create the life that you have today?
I am so glad you asked this, because there are so many groups and alliances to support women supporting women, and which is great, and we should do that. But what I've always been trying to do is rope men into it, because they're the other 50%. If we don't have them on board, it's us changing and growing forward and them doing whatever it is that they're doing. And I feel like it's really important to get them involved and not scare them away and make them feel that we hate them, all, which we don't most of the time. Some of the time, I mean,
Yeah.
but they've played an important role in my life because we're in tech, right? In tech, there's screenshots that I've taken, sent to my friends, like yet again on a Zoom call when I'm the only woman.
Mhm.
And there's moments, you know, my mentor and friend, the one who gave me the Hunter S. Thompson, I called him like my penis voice, because we'd be on a meeting together and it was a Zoom call or something, and I'd say something and nobody respond. So I would text him, I'm like, hey, could you penis this for me? And he would literally just repeat what I said. And people would be like, oh, Clinton, well, that's a fantastic idea. Why don't we do that? And he always give me credit, right? And those are the allies, the male allies that we need to work with and acquire and make sure that they're included in all these discussions and all our women in tech meetups, to help us grow, because they give us that support. They help us, give us that voice. And they're crucial. They've been crucial in my life, and in my career growth.
And I agree with you so much. In many of the books and the writings, that's a lot of what comes out, is that women can say something and the man can say the exact same thing, and then it's taken on. But a female, it's almost like her voice is not heard. I believe, and I'm not sure how you feel about this, so please tell me, it's not intentional. It's just through culture and grooming and growing. So we need men there to change the lens of the glasses that everyone at the table is looking through, because it's not only men at the other end that aren't hearing us. They could be females at the table, and oftentimes they too are not responding, collaborating, listening, unless it's coming from our male counterparts. So how do you, in your current role with 21 people, how do you ensure that you're creating an environment where you're bringing males in, you're also looking at how the females are perceiving and responding, and you're creating that equitable foundation for all to kind of change that lens that they look through?
So what worked for me personally in growing my career is, you know, over my life, I learned to be what people call brave, or fearless. They call me fearless. It's brave or stupid, where I just say things and see what happens. And that has helped me in situations where I feel like I'm being ignored or not listened to, and I would speak up. Sometimes it backfires, because then you get that painting of being bossy and demanding. We're like, well, I said that already, right? And that never sounds really good. And I started doing that, you know, when I made friends, be like, hey, you know, I text him in the on, you know, outside of the conversation, being like, I already said that. Can you shine the light on this? Right. So I did that for myself, because of my personality allowing that for me. But as a leader, I make sure that while I'm in meetings and I know the people that are there might be introverted or new, I always message them at the same time. What do you think? Do you need me to say something? If you want, please feel free to speak up. Like, I encourage everybody to speak up, but I also, in tech, having so many introverts, I always want to give people a different means of communicating, right? I like having 2 sets of meetings where we have a discussion meeting and then the decision meeting. So the loud people can talk, and then we give it a couple of days, and the people that don't speak up in meetings have opportunity to send messages and be like, well, I thought about it, I slept on it, you know, these are my thoughts on it. And then we have a decision meeting where we can get together. Giving the voice, it has to do a lot to, you know, actually listening to the people and getting to know them and figuring out how it is that they communicate, and then just putting yourself out there. And what I've been doing personally, I don't know if I recommend this, I always go out on a limb and I'll be the stupid one, or I'll be the obnoxious one, so others can see that it's okay. Like, I'll go out and say something or ask a dumb question just to make everybody else comfortable, being like, well, if she said it, then I can too, right? That's kind of the approach I've been taking.
I love that. So what I'm hearing is be fearless, be bold. And how you're being fearless is you're using your voice to ensure that you are not playing small or quiet, but you're also giving an opportunity for your team to use their voice in whatever way that is. So you're not just expecting them to show up loud or bold. You're also saying, well, let's look at this a few days from now. So you're engaging with the introverts, you're engaging with the bold players, and you're giving everyone a true seat at the table, regardless of how they communicate or how they feel comfortable. And I believe that that's the best way to do it, because that is the power of diversity in the workforce. It's not having everyone have to be the same as the majority. It's giving those who are the minority an opportunity to bring their unique gifts, their differences, and their special talents to the table in the way that feels comfortable for them. So I love that. Thank you for that example. Now I have another question for you. How it does that, and maybe it doesn't, that sounded very leading. The lawyer in you is probably like, what? But how do you take some of that and leverage it in your home with your 2 boys, 7 and 10, and your husband? Because it sounds to me like you're a bit outnumbered in the house from a male-female perspective anyways.
Well, it's funny. I was actually just telling the story at an event that I was at yesterday, how I've been in tech, and so I'm the work wife, right? My husband stays home with the kids. He takes care of the kids, he cooks, he cleans, and I go to work and I make the money. And that has been the way since my first one was born 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And at one point I remember being on a Zoom call with a worker, Sean, I think it was Sean. And my son comes on and like pokes his head out. I'm like, hey, this is Sean, the software engineer. And my son looks at me, goes, boys can code? I'm like, because he's so used to me working and I have other women that I code with. He's like, oh, that's so cool. I could learn code too. So the perspective has shifted. I don't know. I feel like I manage and parent very similarly, mm-hmm. where I give a lot of freedom and a lot of trust. Not that they will do what I want, but that they do their best, and that I trust that their intentions are good, right? So I brace myself for things going terribly wrong most of the time. And I think that may be an Eastern European perspective, that like things will probably just go terribly wrong. And I accept that. I accept that and give people freedom. So both at work and in my home, my kids have very few rules, and for better or for worse, no real bedtime, and everything is really up for discussion. So most of the time that really works. Sometimes I just need a glass of wine at the end of the night to to
Yes.
not think about it anymore.
Yes, we all need that. But I heard that you're treating your children with the same respect that you're treating your team and your staff, which is giving them the space to think through things, to fail, and to come back. And I think it's a gift the way you've used all of the changes in your life and the resilience in your life to bring forth that nurturing, but yet very space orientated place for your children to grow, because so often it's all about rules and it's all about everything has to be so, and this facade of perfection, when we are naturally imperfect people, can really lead to mental health issues. It can lead to us feeling stressed and unworthy. And so it sounds to me like a really healthy environment. So kudos to you for doing that. Now, you've given us such a beautiful story. Tell me about a time in your life where you felt that you were struggling or you were less than those around you, where, inside you had a little bit of that unworthiness feeling arise, or a feeling of not quite what everyone else was around you. Unworthiness can be very strong, but some time where you've struggled with that.
I mean, that's like every day, right? Every day, imposter syndrome like scratches at my brain. Like, what are you doing here? Yesterday, I was on stage, part of a Women Tech Council event. I was one of the connectors leading groups, and, they introduced me, and the bio that I wrote about myself, having them read it out loud to a room of like 100 or 200 people just blew my mind. I felt so awkward and so uncomfortable. And those are like, none of it was lies. It was me and I wrote it and it was true. And it was just so weird hearing that. And then they let us off and we're going to lead discussions. And the minute I sat down with this group of people, I have this moment of exploding, like, why am I even here? Why, like, who would want to listen to me when I give talks, right as I go on stage? That's the first thing I'm like, why am I here? But I do it because there's a reason I'm here, right? You have that moment of fear and disbelief, but you've already made it here. So you just need to take that next step, and you just kind of quiet that voice. And as probably most people, definitely most women, you'll have meetings where as a leader, you make decisions and you call out people and you do things. And then you go home at night and lie in bed wide awake, questioning every word that you said. And what if I was completely wrong, right? So that happens on the regular. I've accepted it as just part of my existence, and probably everybody's. I think everybody who cares about what they do and cares how they show up and how they interact with people have those moments of just questioning, like, did I do the right thing? And the best thing we can do is just move forward. And if we screw up, own it. And I think that's the key. Like, if you made a mistake, don't say, well, the circumstances were this, and the moon was on phase 3, and I'm a Scorpio, so that didn't work out. And my mom used to force me to eat something.
Broccoli.
So I'd just be like, hey, you know what? I made the call. It was a bad mistake. It was a bad call. Let's backtrack. Let's review how we can make it better, and then move forward. Just owning it and moving forward. That's all we really have, right?
Yeah, that's very powerful, because I too do that every single day, and going on stage or even coming on and recording this podcast and video for people out there. We have the best intentions, but I always have that moment of, am I doing a good job? Could I do better? What have I done incorrectly? And should I be here? And who wants to listen to me? So I love the idea of just taming that voice, not quieting it, because I think that really enables us to push ourselves to do better, be better, and grow, but just taming it so that we can use it to our advantage, and it doesn't prevent us from playing. It doesn't make us play small and go into a box, right? Because for so many women, they're taught how to behave, and men too, right? And there's these dynamics of shifting cultural norms, and men are struggling in the same capacity to find out, where do they fit in and how does this all work? So to be able to tame those questions in your mind, leverage them to push yourself forward, I think is very powerful. Now, as we're doing that and we're trying to be our best version of self, sometimes we just work, and attach ourselves to the outcomes of our work or our achievements. And we were talking a little bit about the ability to shut all of that off and just be sometimes. And by shutting off the work and maybe sometimes doing a full shutdown and going on vacation, you get that revitalization you need and that creative space you need to come back and do even better. So recently, I think you took a little bit of a holiday, and it was the first time in your long, lengthy career of 10 years in leadership that you shut everything off. Tell me about that.
I did. I made the decision to, one, leave my laptop at home, which I don't think I've ever gone for. This was 2-week vacation. I don't think I've ever gone that long without bringing my laptop with me. But what was even more different is I went through my phone and I turned off notifications for any and all work-related email. Actually, all email was turned off. So I didn't get any notifications. I could go in and check it, but like it wasn't a ping. What the huge difference there is even if you're on vacation and you're just periodically scanning the messages that are coming through, your brain keeps processing them in the background. And sometimes it's issues that just irk at you and you keep thinking, so you don't ever really let go and have that relaxation. You don't have that, not even like a personal relaxation, but removing yourself from problems or from issues or from your workspace allows you to have more creative approaches and allows you to have better ideas. There's tons of literature talking about, Walden and Thoreau and Ben Franklin and, even more recently, Cal Newport was talking about deep work, and McKelly, last name who nobody knows how to pronounce, with flow work, about doing just that. Like, you need that silence. You need to go out, not listen to music, not read a book, not listen to a podcast, but just be with your thoughts for even a few hours a day. And given I got 2 weeks, well, my mother was there, and that's a whole different story. But giving that gives you such a fresh perspective. And I came back invigorated. I usually come back from these vacations where I have my phone, where I'm like, okay, more of the same. I came back and I hit the ground running. I really wanted to do more. I got more organized. I reached out to all these people that I feel like I've neglected. I checked in on coworkers that I haven't talked to in a while. So it's been great. I couldn't recommend more turning off your phone. Like, literally just turn it off. Don't check the messages. Don't get those alerts, because that's the brain capacity that like keeps just kind of pulling at you the whole time.
That multitasking that sucks the energy out of you. And what did that do for your time with your kids and your family?
I think my kids actually bonded with me more. I was able to pay attention. We all have those moments where, you pick up your phone, you see a work message, your brain starts working about work, and then you're supposed to be with your kid at the beach or at the playground or anywhere else. And all of a sudden they ask you a question and you're annoyed because you checked your phone and now you're in the work mode and they're interfering with that, even though it's their time. So I've gotten to the point that my kids call me out and be like, oh, you're on phone again. Like, hi, can you put that down? And it was great because I was there. I got to see, they learned how to swim. My 7-year-old learned how to dive into the pool, and I could be there for that. And I wasn't videotaping it. My mom was, or anything. I could just be present and hang out with them. And it was an amazing 2 weeks. My 10-year-old, I think, likes me again, or at least a little bit more than before we left.
That's wonderful. Beautiful. Well, listen, this is amazing. Just thinking back on your story, moving, getting up with a backpack and going like across the world for 2 2 years, not even knowing you're leaving your friends behind, thinking you're going on a fun cruise, staying there, coming back after you just got settled, reinvigorating reinvesting yourself with your old friends, going through all those changes, then moving to America and switching, where you're going, what you're doing, from being a doctor to being creative to finally getting into tech, and then building this life that works for you with your husband and your 2 children who your husband stays at home and he enables you the space to go out and do what you love. It's a really beautiful story. And it sounds like through all that hard work, you've stayed grounded. You've been able to manage both your personal and your professional and these 21 developers that work for you. And it sounds like that resilience has played through. So you very much inspired me today, and I'm sure inspired many of the people listening. But the ending question that I always ask is, if you could go back to that little girl before 7, before getting on that cruise, the little girl, maybe 5, 6 years old, and tell her one thing that maybe would resonate with her, what would it be?
I thought about this actually a lot, even before I knew that was going to be a question. The one thing that I wish somebody told me, or I could tell myself, is that I don't have to do everything by myself. I don't have to do it all on my own. Most of my childhood, since that and through all that moving and change and language changes, school changes and culture changes, I felt like I needed to prove myself to everybody, but by myself. I never asked for help. If I didn't understand a word, I would just pretend I knew. I wouldn't ask, because it would feel like I would think that somebody would think I'm stupid and they wouldn't want to talk to me again. But it's not true. Asking questions makes you curious, makes you want to know, and that resonates with other people, and puts such a unnecessary burden on yourself when you feel like you have to accomplish it by yourself because it's not worth it if you don't. That's not true. Having a great network of people and building connections and having people that you can rely on or ask favors of, or just strangers, asking them for help, try that. People are more than willing to help, and they're happy to help. Most people want to help. They want to be helpful. So that's one thing I would tell myself when I was 5, be like, ask for help, work with other people. You don't have to do it all on your own.
So powerful. You're equally as strong when you execute with curiosity and you ask for help. And not only that, you give people the gift of being able to serve you and help you. I personally love when I can give back to my community around me. And I, like you, went through the majority of my life thinking I had to do and build everything on my own. And I will tell you, it's not until last year that I actually found the strength to ask for help. Even after a stroke, I was like, no way I can do this. I was back at work in 5 days. And what I've come to realize is that pause, that curiosity, that question, and that asking for help is a game changer. And it's usually not just serving us, it serves others as well. So Martyna, thank you so much for being with me today. You're an inspiration. And for all of you ladies out there wanting to get into tech, or all of you males out there that want to be an alliance to us ladies in tech, thank you for all you do. And here is a perfect example of how you can go after and create anything you want in life. Execute with some curiosity, be resilient. Remember, life is happening for you, and everything is part of the balance and equanimity of life. Thank you for joining us today. And Martyna, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Tara.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe and follow me. And also, if you want some other content, hit me up on Tara Myshrall Speaks on Instagram, or join my inner circle at taramyshrall.com. You will be the first to receive new content when it drops, as well as the first to get the Women's Spotlight. Learn about other amazing women in our local community that are up to big things. Thanks again, with love and light. Until next time, guys.